Yeah, I mean, we've got to reflect on the last game still. It's important to still learn from that. It was outstanding first half, best of the year. I love the way we played. I love the way we executed. I think that gives us a good blueprint for the game model of how we want to execute and play in terms of our brand. Um, but also you saw when the mentality wasn't right in the second half for those first 15 minutes, what can happen. There's another side of, not executing. And so it's great for the guys to be able to see the good and then to see what happens when you're not as focused, not as hungry, and you don't execute as well. It happens. On Saturday there were 5 games in MLS where teams squandered a 2-0 lead, 5 games. But we don't want to be one of those teams that does that if we're going to be a team that achieves our goals. So we learned from that, but a great end too. It was great for us to respond and obviously not lose the game, to find a point under the circumstances really shows a good mentality for the group. So we put that behind us, and then now we learn from it and prepare for DC, just like always.
You mentioned the end of that game. It's the 5th game this year where this group, whether it's been an equalizer or a winner, has scored late to get a result. So how valuable has that sort of never say die attitude been with this group, and how valuable is it throughout the full course of a season?
Yeah, I think we have a good mentality. We also have good subs. Subs are solutions, and last year we didn't have that. We bring guys into the game. We've got guys that can bring us what we need. Whether that's to kill a game off or whether that's to find a goal. Also, it shows the group's hungry, the group's fit, and then we can raise our level. Obviously there's going to be adversity that hits in games where you have lulls like we had, but you got to be able to respond, to it and pull yourself out of it, which we did, fortunately. So I think it's a great game for us to really learn, and obviously I can't overlook that first half, because that's how we want to play. We just got to do it for 90 minutes.
I know you mentioned on Saturday, too, some of the guys who had come off the bench and made an impact. Obviously, Maxi and Luis combined on the goal. Wyatt, you mentioned, had come in and done a good job. So when you go through a busy week like this, how nice is it for you to see some of those guys come off the bench, make an impact, and maybe help some of the decisions that you now have to make through the rest of the week?
Yeah, we need that. It's a team, and if your name's not called to start and your name's called to come into the game and provide, that push, provide what we need, that's the role that you have. If you're not a starting player in that game, then you need to be ready to come into the game. And I love that Brandon and Wyatt and Luis and Maxi came into the game and gave us what we needed.
Now, you don't get a ton of time on the training ground these 2 days, so how much of these quick turnarounds is about sort of assessing where guys are physically and figuring out what you have for the rest of the week?
Yeah, a lot of the decisions come in the form of your rotation. A lot of teams in this week, the best teams, they keep most of their same guys in. It's not a problem to do that, but there are certain guys that are more at risk. Guys that haven't done it in the past, guys that have previous injury history, or if you have in certain positions a little more depth, where you feel like there's not a drop-off when you rotate, then those are decisions you make to ensure that you have, guys that are fresh and sharp and mentally ready for this next game. But we'll get a day tomorrow to make those decisions and prepare. We rely a lot on the medical staff as well, their advice and expertise. Can't overthink it. I think that's the other thing. And really we need to rely on our continuity and consistency in the habits that we've built, because we're not getting much out of training.
And then finally, just looking at this DC team, I know they're missing Benteke at the moment, maybe changes the look a little bit, but what have you seen from that group in DC in recent weeks and the challenges they can present?
Yeah, I think every game in MLS is a challenge always. On any given day, anybody can beat anybody, and we know that, and we've seen that this year. So I think it'll be a challenge from the standpoint they're hungry to get their season going. They've had some good games. They've played good teams and been in games against good teams and gotten results. So they've mixed up what they've done. A couple different formations, so we'll prepare for, kind of the two ways they've been playing. And, I would expect it to be a game where they're looking to disrupt us, match us and disrupt us, and probably make it a little ugly, be a little direct. And, we'll be ready for that type of game.